will not speak to you from. I'm since 1st of November last year. I've been connected with a Christian University college in Norway called NLA. But I'm not on the academic side. I'm primarily on the strategic leadership side of it, working on external relations and on how to bring our resources, our academic resources, out to a bigger audience than just the ordinary students. So that's my primary responsibility in school. But beside that, I try to read some missiology and see if it's possible to come further with that. But so far, time hasn't been enough for it. So when speaking to you here today, it's more like, I think it's more like a person who has observed over the years and reflected upon those observations, and those might be some good observations and reflections, and some might be doubtful, but let's have a conversation here. I think that is what we should do these days. We should talk together. And I give my contribution here to you, and then it is a starting point for us, I guess. When Alan Hirsch had his excellent lecture here, it came to my mind that yesterday evening, actually, in Bergen, where I live in Norway, we had our cell group. And one of the Bible verses that we read in that cell group yesterday evening at 8 o'clock, I guess, was from Isaiah chapter 43. And it's on the background of God, or the prophet, reminding his people that God has done great things in the times behind us, leading us out from Egypt and droning the army of Pharaoh. And then he continues saying, "But do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." Yeah. That just came to my mind, so I wanted to read it to you. Also, for us, a verse and a Bible quotation to take into our discussions here, because we can paint some pictures of how the situation is, and it's changed definitely. And some will say we should paint dark, make dark paintings. And maybe so, but the Lord is the same, and He is able. And we should be reminded that He who rose Jesus Christ from the dead, He is capable of also breathing His Spirit into the dry bones of Europe. Last weekend, 8-10 days ago, my voice was totally out. I couldn't speak. So it's come back during the week. I haven't sang for... I love singing, but that's been impossible for a time now.
Speaking is enough today.
So I should try and make this, but please bear with me if my voice is hard to understand, also with my language. But of course, some of us are not primarily English speaking, but we try to do our best. I will contribute with a Scandinavian perspective to you. The Scandinavian, or maybe even a Nordic perspective. The Nordic countries being Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, Iceland. Countries where the state churches, and now maybe we should say folk churches, have been very big. They still are. I think in percentage, maybe the biggest Protestant churches in our country's population in the world, so to say. Just below 80% in Norway, and in Denmark I guess it's even higher. In Sweden a little bit lower, in Finland even higher I guess. On the other hand, these might be some of the most secular countries in the world. And a survey which was released only last week, a global survey, told us that the least religious countries in the world, where it was China first, but then it was Sweden. And 76% of the population in Sweden, and this is a survey in 2014-15, 76% claim not either to be religious or atheist. Not religious or atheist. Percentage of respondents in each country claiming to be either either not religious or atheist, of course. So, not religious or atheist, 76% of the Swedish population. Denmark is 52%. They didn't measure Norway. We might be closer to Denmark in this with these amounts, I guess, but it says something about parts of the world where the knowledge is it contradicts each other. On the one side, the secularization; on the other side, the nominal representation of the church. And I also made two words central for us here: secularism and spirituality. Because we can find both in that culture. I guess that the Nordic and Scandinavian culture also might be recognized in other countries and cultures down in Europe. And we could ask, is our culture, as we see it today and experience it today in Europe, is it secular? Is it religious? Is it spiritual? Of course, something happened September 11, 2001 in New York, which put religion on the agenda again in our culture, both in America and in Europe. And a whole lot of things have also happened after that. And the big thinkers, like maybe in our lifetime, the biggest sociologist of religion, Peter Berger, he had to rethink his theories on secularization. And maybe Europe's most influential philosopher in our lifetime, Jürgen Habermas, also started rewriting some of the things that he had done. With a new insight that religion is not out, it's not dead, it will be there in the public sphere. And we need to give it a room and listen to its voice even in the public sphere. Which was the opposite message in many respects from what they had thought before. And also in our countries and in our continent we have had several conflicts over cartoons with the Muslim world and the Muslim population even in Europe. So religion is there, it's not out. And there were some people also who wrote this book, God is back. God is back in our culture. or in our cultures on our American and European continents. God is back. But is he? That is still a question that I will ask. Because I wonder what sorts of spirituality is it that we have in our midst today, and which sort of spirituality is dominant, so to say. A little bit about the scene on which we are called to be in God's mission in Europe. At least in Norway, and I see it also in the other Scandinavian countries, we experience a very heavy church critic. Like also Alan Hirsch showed us from Australia, the church as such does not have a high score. Even though when we had this terrorist attack in Norway just a few years ago, 4 years ago, and some 80 people were murdered in cold blood, most of them young politicians. It was the church that was the place that people came to. But then we also, of course, can discuss which role did the church have and take and get. Which were the songs that they had to sing or took in. What was the message that the church brought in that situation? And it's not an easy situation. So we shall not put heavy burdens on the church if it had some wrongdoings. But it's one side of it that people, they had only the church as the place they could gather. No other place in the culture, actually. On the other hand, I think that we will see it also when we evaluate it now, that the church had to compromise, so to say, because there should be this arena for all, this common arena for all. But the church critic, nevertheless, is very strong in our culture. It's a parole, the churches are privileged. In our culture, for 1,000 years, they've been privileged. And that is used against us. Of course it is. Because we have this protest also against authorities, which came with the 1960s. And then the church is that sort of an institution, and still it is. Still it is. It's privileged, and it's not good that it's privileged. Then in our culture we have very much got a focus on what in the culture is seen as oppressed groups. In our country and in the Nordic countries we have the Samis, which is seen as an oppressed group, and the politics is pretty much directed towards lifting up the Samis, who have been oppressed by the society, and because the church was so big, important part of society, giving it even the premises for, or giving it the reasons for how they should act in the generation behind us. Then the oppression on the Samis by the society was the oppression by the church. The gypsy population, gays, all sorts of groups who are considered oppressed, they have a positive focus in our culture. And the churches mainly are on the wrong side, or have been historically. And there is also focus on anti-discrimination towards those groups, but even also we have had case courts in the European humanitarian courts on different questions where Christians have become minorities, but still even we have become Jesus-believing Christians have become a minority on our continent. Still, we are considered being on the majority side, so to say. This is one point that strikes me very much. We have quite a lot of critique against religion if we look in newspapers, if we look at Facebook and on Twitter, all the social medias, there's a whole lot of critique in our societies against religion. And we understand that the sort of critique is directed towards what we have experienced from extremist Islamic groups around in the world. But there are very few raising that critique, raising it as a critique against Islam, which might be good, but it's raised as a critique against religion, meaning that we also must include the Christians. That's important to include the Christians in that critique. I think that in our Scandinavian countries we have secular public hostility against religion as such and against the church. That's how we experience it, at least for myself, coming from the folk church. But I wonder, are free churches more reliable, or do they just slip under the radar? Or are they irrelevant in the culture? Because most of this focus is towards the folk churches, actually, even though people are members of those churches. Well, this is Burton Ernie, because there is a court case coming up in Dublin over a bakery refusing to make a cake with a gay slogan on it, because it was against their Christian conscience. And that goes to court as an illustration. The second scene, the mindset. If I talk with and I have a whole lot of secular friends, I like most to be with my secular friends, sort of neo-religious friends, the new spirituality. I don't understand always, but I can understand the mindset of a secular, because I'm somehow secular myself, I guess. But they are very strong on this, that secular is neutral. Secular is neutral. It's not a chosen one, or it's not one option, it's the option. And increasingly, even if we go to the statistics, it's increasingly atheist. Neutral is increasingly atheist in the common mind of the secular or of the Scandinavian mindset. We should know about that. And I have one of the leading evolutionary professors in Norway. Is a very close friend of mine, and he was an active Christian. He left the faith a number of years ago, and he says to me, it's because God doesn't add anything necessary. God doesn't add anything necessary. And even I have never experienced anything with him. And he was high up in leadership in organizations in Norway. Somehow we are done with Richard Dawkins. It's not his militant way of it, but what I meet with my friends is a much more polite way of saying the same thing. We're done with it. We don't need it. Also, the mindset is, we have this late modern hermeneutics, of course, where actually a thing can mean even the opposite of what it actually is. But that the meaning is created in my own mind. I can decide the meaning of the text from the meaning in my head, in my own context. My context can govern the text which is made in a different context. And we have had a whole lot of discussion this winter in the Norwegian Christian newspapers about the very now rapid, it seems like we have come into a rapid decline in church statistics. When I worked a whole lot of Christian statistics in the 80s and up to the beginning of the 90s, it was relatively stable. That, let's say, 40% of the population in Norway had some sort of a Christian framework of their thinking. But now when we go to the same statistics today, it's down to 20, it seems like. But now, over the last 5 years, and it seems like we are in a time of a rapid change. It's not a slow curve anymore. It breaks. It seems to break, according to the late statistics on religiosity and that sort, and atheism and that sort of questions. We see it on baptism. We see it on confirmation. And we start also now to see it on funerals, which has been the last stronghold due to the age of those who die, of course. But now we start seeing it in the state church, also on the funerals. And it's speeding up. It seems like it's speeding up. In 2010, we had a survey of the European countries, those in EU and those 3 of us just outside. This is the question, do you believe that there is a personal God? And the Turks, they believe in that, even the Romanians with all the gypsies. And we see also Italy, Portugal, Ireland, Poland, not surprisingly. But a country like Sweden and Czech Republic, they are below 20% who believed in 2010 in a personal God. And there are also statistics. Do you believe in any sort of gods with a not with a capital G, spiritual power, something out there? And then these are numbers. I don't believe in anything of that. And then Sweden come up with, and France is the biggest country, around 50% don't believe in any supernatural being. It's the one now to the left for you, or to the right for you, yeah. Scene 3. But what we also see is a sort of spirituality reshaped, even in these countries. We have gone from a tolerant plurality, and we have ended, as far as I can see it, into a relativizing pluralism. And there's a difference between pluralism and plurality, in my opinion. Because pluralism is a sort of a dogma. It says that the truth is in the plural. The plurality is a descriptive word and has much more capacity of tolerance. I don't know if you can recognize these things. It's like Chesterton, he was quoted here also by Alan Hirsch. When people stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing. They start believing anything. I think it's something what we can see in our culture as well. But this is one of the things that I want to share with you, and you can discuss it afterwards, because I don't know how much I can bring arguments for it. It's an observation for me and reflection on that. It seems to me that pretty much all of the spirituality as we experience it now and discuss it in our culture, it's immanent, so to say. It's not transcendent. We have TV programs going on the spirit of the houses, but it gives mainly sort of psychological explanations of everything. And the neo-spiritual movement, it turns inwards into ourselves. We shall release our capacities. We shall find our resources. So to me it seems like the spirituality, because of religion and religiosity, that is out. But spirituality somehow is in many respects is in, like also Alan Hirsch showed from Australia. But it seems to me like it's somehow an immanent spirituality that we have in the Scandinavian countries. It's not open to a transcendent reality which we can face, so to say, and should face. And we can ask, is it a self-made religion? We often talk about that, a self-made, individualistic, a pick and mix religion or spirituality. Well, why do people then pick the same? It's like the plural media which tend to say the same. So I'm not quite sure how self-made it is. I think we are shaped by our culture also in this. What I see in this spirituality is that there is what lacks from religiosity is that this new spirituality, it lacks a commitment. There is no one I stand in front of with my life. I'm not responsible, so to say, for anybody else than myself. And then the commitment is much weaker than we have met it in traditional religiosity. And also maybe a little less fellowship, I guess. On the other hand, in our culture, there is not only spirituality, we also have a very growing public Muslim presence in the culture. And what did I do now? Okay. And I ask, is Philip Jenkins right while saying that we in the future or in the years to come, and it's already is in the midst amongst us, a Christian revival from the south, like London, where the black churches on an ordinary Sunday today gather more people than the more white dominant churches in that city. And this is about also to be the situation in cities like Oslo and other other cities also in Scandinavian countries. We are not there yet, but we are on the way there. Which makes faith and religion also back in the public sphere. Is that the hope? Is that the hope for Europe, so to say? Strategy. In my opinion, if we look for strategies, we should look for a serving church. I think we need to answer the question about the old authority of the church with answering with the servant church, to take color from Jesus Christ. We must accept talking from the margins, and we should start talking to the margins. And in the latest mission document from the World Council of Churches, which I've done some studies in, this is one of the 4 main points. Mission in the times ahead will be mission from the margins, and it will have an appeal to the margin and find its way into the culture from the margins. But just think about Pope Francis, who has got this reputation of authenticity in his testimony, because he has done some symbolic and important demonstrations of what it would say to have solidarity with the poor, and he has spoken up about it. And there is somehow a correlation between what he has done and what he has said. And he has got a good reputation on our continent due to that, because there is authenticity. The last statistics I saw on loneliness in Norway is that 10% of the population in Norway is lonely in more like a therapeutic way. But that 20% of the population is in great danger of it. That's a whole lot of people. If that's so in Germany, that's a whole lot of people. How can a church be a church for those who are lonely in our deaconal thinking? One of our churches in Norway has set a standard for sharing goodness. 1 week every year there is a goodness festival. And now it's spread around in many towns around in Norway, with churches coming together saying this first week of June we shall show goodness to our neighbors. And then they do all sorts of good things, washing cars and painting houses and doing the gardens and all sorts of things, just because they want to bless their surroundings. Is that a way forward for a servant church in Europe? Strategy number 2. I worked with IFS for many years, the International Fellowship of Evangelical Students. And I'm confident that we need to have a renewed, and we are about to get, I'm very happy to say, we are about to get a renewed apologetics. We need an apologetic church, not least for those who belong to the church. Not least for us who belong to the church. Because the way I see the situation is that we have got a world view in our culture which leaves out God with a capital G. It's not him that we face. And we need to bring our people back to facing God. To understand that my life is lived under his heaven. It's in him that we move, that we live, that we are made, that we are created. And I think this is the horizon which is lost with many people, very many people, in our Scandinavian country, and I will guess even in other countries in Europe. And we need to talk, we need to work on getting this perspective and horizon back. Also to work on Christians, work on those who follow Jesus Christ, and said discipleship also implies discipleship of the mind, so that we can be reshaped in our thought patterns. It's an immense job, but it's necessary that we go in and do it. And following up that, I think re-evangelizing the universities. I'm at University College now, and we have started talking in Norway about the master disease. Should all people have a master now? Okay, they should not probably, but people do take education and higher education, and in an increasing level. And we have to relate to that, because that shapes our culture. And then we need not only the apologetics as an intellectual rehearsal or test or work, but we need to have a re-evangelized world of universities. I think that is an important way forward for the churches in Scandinavia, and I guess also in Europe. I'm working both with the World Council of Churches mission document and Cape Town Commitment. And this is one of the very, very strong emphasis in the Cape Town Commitment, calling the Christians back to penetrate the public sphere. Because the gospel has a message, not only as a message, but it should send out the disciples of Jesus Christ in all sorts of societal areas, because the gospel should have a voice in and give it color. Strategy number 3, and it's my last point, and maybe the thing that I'm most eager to say something about. We need a visible and viable Christian spirituality. A spirituality that can be relevant also for those people who we are going to serve in the Christian mission. There is a quest for authentic experience. That's what I see in our culture. There is a quest for authentic experience. And one of the churches that I worked quite a lot with in Norway, they are very eager to share their testimonies, not only in words, but also in intercessions and doing good, because they want to show people that living with Jesus Christ is a life-changing, encounter to meet Jesus Christ. How can we help our churches to meet the quest for authentic experience in our culture? And this church which I'm talking about, they almost every day they have intercession ministry in their city in Norway, going out on the marketplace, meeting people, asking them, is something I can pray for in your life. And it has opened up for the gospel for so many people. Not starting with the gospel, but starting with the needs. How can we meet your needs? How can we meet your needs? Prayer and intercession. And I wonder, is there a way back to the holy celebration? Or shall we say that the weekends, we have lost the Sunday? We just celebrated Easter in Norway. Most Christians in Norway do not celebrate Easter in church. They celebrate it in a cabin up in the mountain. How can we get back the holy celebration? Because in our culture, if I go and ask people in Oslo, who are those people who are religious in this city? Who are those people who pray in this city? They would say, oh, it's the Muslims. Because they can see it. They can hear it. They just do it. But we are private. And it's some of the negative legacy from pietism, that we became private. What positively should be personal became private. Meeting this private or individualized modernity. How can we win it back? Because I think we need a body language. We need a body language of spirituality, the Christian church in Europe. Saying that we have a way of worshipping God. And let people know. I think you can talk more about this. But this is one of the things that is coming up now, and I hope that it shall come with power now in Norway. And some groups, some churches have started taking this much more in, because we have left over decades, we have left families now without help in raising their children in following Jesus Christ. That's the sin of the Norwegian churches, not the Norwegian churches, Norwegian churches. But there are some people now refocusing on how can we rebuild the Christian family, so the mothers and fathers can be pastors for their children and help them to be disciples of Jesus Christ. And we need to build this disciple culture between the generations. Some churches in Norway are building up big mentoring programs so that younger Christians and more mature Christians can go follow each other, go with each other, talk to each other. I think we need to build this disciple culture where we can pass on the legacy from those who still are there and have lived with Jesus Christ for a while. And I will end it all with the saying, I guess, that made most impression on me at the Mission Congress for the Lausanne movement in 2010 in Cape Town. When Chris Wright, who wrote most of the Cape Town commitment, he addressed us and he called us back to be his, not belonging to Chris Wright, but belonging to Jesus Christ, with an authentic testimony in our cultures, with humility, with integrity, and with simplicity, being his. Thank you.
So one last exercise for tonight. If you would take the board that is on your table and turn it over.